What is the most paranormal thing you have experienced? Posted one day ago. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. When I was 21, there was a huge obsession around a rumored ghost on a motorbike that chased your speeding car in a long stretch of road, Lemon Tree Passage, NSW, Australia. Me and my friends tried speeding along the road multiple times with no ghost experience. One day, we drove there as a joke and pulled over on the side of the road to see if other people would be speeding along trying to catch a glimpse. From out of nowhere, a single headlight came from the road behind our parked car and a motorbike sped straight past us. All of us stopped breathing. I remember my eyes watering so fast, and one of the girls in the back of the car screamed from being so scared. The motorbike rider was not an apparition. It was a full, solid, real-looking person on a bike, except the bottom half of the motorbike tires didn't exist. It was like he was floating, but you could see him clearly and hear the exhaust. Not just that, but he disappeared into thin air right in front of us. We were not on drugs or alcohol, and half the people in the car did not even believe in paranormal stuff. We cried all the way home and never spoke about it ever again, and to this day, thinking about it makes my heart race and my eyes water. I will forever question if what all of us saw was real. We all saw the same thing. We all saw him disappear. It was night, and I was at my family's house. Then the lights of the kitchen started flickering. My friend asked me what is wrong with the lights. Jokingly, I told her that it must be a genie. Where I live, Turkey, genies are very commonly seen as real. They're believed to be something like spirit monster stuff, and to summon them, you need to call their name 3 times. I said something like, "Oh, genie, leave us," 3 times, then suddenly lights stopped flickering. I thought it was a coincidence, so I said genie 3 times to summon it again. Lights started to flicker again, but this time it was getting faster, and at the end the light bulb exploded. Normally I don't believe in this kind of fairy tale. It was probably some kind of malfunction, by the way. Sorry if I made any grammar mistakes. You did, but that's okay. I was in a bad place, housing-wise, and I had bumped into an old acquaintance I haven't seen in a short while after spending the weekend camping in a precarious location. We never really had gotten to know each other past names, general location, and surface interest. Anyways, after hearing my plight, they offered me a place to stay until my housing situation became a bit more solid. Not wanting to spend another warm winter in the woods, I accepted the offer. It was a small cottage. Ascending a narrow staircase, you're on the 2nd floor, tightly put together with a large bedroom just off the landing and a smaller bedroom tucked into the right-hand corner. The larger room was the parents' room, the smallest the acquaintance. Not much in the room, but also not much space. It was big enough to afford one twin-size bed, a squat dresser with a 20-inch tube television VCR combo, and a lone speaker with an auxiliary cord plugged into the headphone jack of a Sony CD Walkman. There also was a short writing desk with a small 2-pane window overlooking the backyard. More importantly, the door to the bedroom wasn't much of a door, but slatted bifold doors. That first night after dinner, we caught Lethal Weapon 2 on VCR, my friend in their bed and I on the floor, and we passed out. Sometime in the middle of the night, there was something coming up the stairs with a heavy foot. Dismissing it, I continued to sleep. Then it sounded again. I stirred, noticed the hall light was switched on, but dismissed it. Next, I heard the bifold doors part. I looked, and in the opening of the parted doors was a small toddler-sized shape. I couldn't dismiss it this time because my friend is the only child. The bifold doors opened wider, and I did my best to dismiss it as a late-night hallucination. I hunkered down, and at that moment the figure stomped its way into the room and dropped before me. In an attempt to prove it's just a hallucination, I opened my eyes. All I could see was the toddler shape in the darkness and a growing, full-toothed grin. Suddenly, a cold palm gently pressed on the side of my face, the pressure increasing as the shape's hot copper and ink-smelling breath hit my nose. The pressure got worse and worse. It was an intense pain. Then, it was morning, and I had admittedly wet the floor. My friend asked what happened, and I explained the whole thing, still shaking. I decided to skip breakfast and spent the time cleaning the carpet. Then the yelling began downstairs. My friend's mother demanded that I leave the house immediately without any explanation. A few days later, I'm at the market picking up some materials for my camp, and I see the acquaintance. They apologized for what happened the other night and explained the ejection. Apparently, unbeknownst to my friend, The mother had a child before them, and the child lived in the room we were in. It's where the crib was and all that. Turns out there was a tragic incident where the child suffocated in the crib. It was never to be discussed outside the mother and father due to obvious reasons, and never to be talked about again. So they had another child, my friend, and carried on with life, tucking away the dark secret, never to be seen again until I came along. Even to this day, nearly 23 years later, anytime I see the parents, they will not acknowledge me in any way up to and including crossing the street. I will forever remember that cold palm crushing down on the right side of my face, that putrid breath, and the toddler shape in the doorway, lighted by the hallway light. I used to do yard work for my neighbor, a World War II vet that has limited use of one arm due to nerve damage from some shrapnel. He was hospitalized with pneumonia my senior year in high school. While returning home from shopping with my mom, he waved at me from his front yard. When we got home, I called his house to see if he wanted me to come over the next weekend. His wife answered. He had passed away that morning. Never saw him again. He was probably just saying goodbye. Also, when my dad was dying, cancer sucks, every morning during the week leading up to his passing, there was a mist under the light on my parents' porch. The day he died was the last day that mist was there, and the porch smelled like my grandfather's Old Spice. I think he was waiting for his son. So, about a year ago, my bro and I were walking our dogs. Our neighbors were doing their normal partying, but no lights or anything. About halfway through our walk, lights seemed to appear above us. The neighbors weren't doing it, we checked. Then we looked up, and that's where the lights were coming from. That's all we could see though. It was a pretty cloudy night. I know that happened, both of us remember it. Of course, our parents didn't believe us one bit. I'm sure this was just my stupid brain making things up. I woke up in the middle of the night one time with a very bad feeling. My cat woke up too and was staring at the foot of my bed. He started growling and his hair stood up. I woke up enough to look fully and I swear I saw the Grim Reaper. He smiled at me and nodded at the cat as if to say, "Okay, I lose this time. I'll take him. You're next." I got up and turned on all the lights, and I've never been so scared. Cat got diagnosed with cancer a few weeks later and died shortly after. I had a dream about a mass shooting in Las Vegas a week before the 2017 Las Vegas shooting happened. In my dream, it was at an open-air mall, and in reality, it was an open-air concert. In both my dream and reality, the shooter was using an automatic rifle. Both shootings were over fairly quickly. Both had a high number of casualties. The craziest thing to me, though, was that in my dream, the shooter was 30 or so floors up, in a white building with gold-tinted windows. Stephen Paddock was on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay, which is a white building with gold-tinted windows. I remember when the actual shooting happened, I had this knot in my stomach watching news coverage and people's various social media videos and pictures from on scene, just how close my dream was. My parents worked a lot when I was a kid, so the vast majority of my childhood was spent with my grandparents in their old house. I was probably about 4 years old. My grandfather always would play hide and seek with me if I asked, and a lot of other games. But one night in particular, we were playing hide and seek. Their house wasn't terribly big. One time I had to do the seeking. Obviously, he wouldn't hide in hard to find spots since I was a little kid, but I looked around the house and opened the door to the guest bedroom and saw him there. Despite there being no lights on in the room, he was under the quilt on the bed in there. I mean, you couldn't miss it. It was a whole-ass human under a blanket, illuminated by the hallway light. It was so obvious. But I run up to it and jump onto the bed and, I don't know, just lets out air until it's totally flat. I was royally confused. The human shape was just gone. I didn't really understand it, but I got up anyways and continued my hide-and-seek search. Later found him behind the recliner in the living room. Looking back on, it's really unnerving. It's been about 20 years since that's happened, and I still think back on it at least a few times a year. This was more of an indirect experience. My wife woke up one morning and told me she had a dream that one of my good friends knocked on her bedroom window. She walked over to the window, and he told her to tell me he was going to be okay. About 2 hours later, I got a call that he had passed away. Stayed in the Casa Monica Hotel, built in the late 1800s in St. Augustine, Florida, oldest continuously lived-in city in America. There were multiple ghostly experiences that night. But the most tangible was when the heavy wooden drawers to the dresser kept opening completely. They weren't on tracks or anything. It was different drawers coming out each time, multiple times, and even on command when we asked. Weirdest part was when my mom and stepdad stayed in the same room the next night. Nothing happened. I was in the kitchen talking to my son's mother-in-law. I see a figure in an old-fashioned powder blue crinoline dress crouching and running down the hall. For a minute I thought it was my son's wife sneaking up on us. Nope, it wasn't. It freaked me out. Mother-in-law said she saw stuff all the time and just ignored it. A few years later, I was working in a huge church in the south. I was alone in the oldest part of the church and just saw almost transparent feet in dress shoes walk across the hall and disappear. Just the feet. I'd be in the music room and hear an older man's voice just say, "No," in a questioning way. I'm a latent psychic, so I have a lot of things. Growing up, I had vivid dreams that I lived out 2 to 3 months later. Feelings that something was about to fall, like a ceiling fan, happened 10 minutes later. Or on the freeway, a chain broke on the truck next to me and I mentally caught it and threw it back on the truck, when it should have smashed the windshield. I met a girl who I could tell was going to have a stroke. I told her daughter it would happen and got a weird look. She was dead less than 2 weeks later. 6 to 7 years ago, at my uncle's apartment, I remember one night I was alone playing on my laptop and heard something from the kitchen. My room was right next to it. At first, I thought the wind blew something since the window was open. As I was playing, I heard a plate breaking on the floor. I went to see what is going on, but none was there and nothing was broken. Then I went back to my game. 5 minutes later, I heard someone running in the hall. I freaked out since I knew that my uncle didn't return home and I was the only one there. I opened the door slowly to see what's happening. There was nothing. Then that thing where you put the light bulb, I don't know what it's called, starts moving. I almost shit my pants and closed the door and went in the bed under the blanket. 1 or 2 hours later, my uncle got home and I went straight to him and told him what happened. He told me that he bought the apartment from a guy whose sister committed suicide by hanging on the thing that was moving earlier after she killed her husband with a piece of a broken plate. 6 to 7 years since, I visited my uncle and not regretting it. When I was 11, I was on a train station waiting for my train to Berlin. It was a thunderstorm that day and it was raining a lot. Suddenly, a big electrical ball formed out of nowhere and just disappeared seconds after. I was in shock and couldn't move. Turns out, it was a lightning ball, one of the rarest things that can ever happen in lifetime. I never came to that train station ever again. Recent. Maybe you have heard this on the news, but we were on a vacation in Germany about 2 weeks ago. It was a lot of fun, and we'll def go back to Germany again. I love it. But one day I woke up and looked at my brother at breakfast and said, something's going to happen today. And I told my mom we could better leave today. She said no, cause she wanted to stay longer. But about 3 hours later, it rained a lot. I told my mom that in 10 minutes I saw in my dream that the river will overflow and that even houses would rip apart. She did not believe me, but lo and behold, it happened. A lot of floods came, and we just got out of the area in time. If I did not warn her, I think we would all be dead. And now about 4 days ago, the same happened, but it was on a vacation in the Netherlands. I told my mom that I had seen this before, and this time she believed me. I said we should get better shelter. And what happened that day was heavy wind and rain, enough to blow a grown man off his feet. Also, there were tornadoes from thingies at sea. I have had happen a lot. I also have it with just normal things, like I saw this woman on her bike and thought, hey, I've seen this before, and I knew she was going to fall, and she fell. Could have warned her. I have 2. My grandmother died in October 1995. In February of 1998, I turned 18. I came home from school and checked the answering machine. My grandmother's voice came out of the speaker singing happy birthday. Then I realized it was my Aunt B who sounded similar. So I called her to thank her for the call. She said, what are you talking about? I was going to call you later. There was no way it was anyone outside the family because she called me by a name only my family uses. The other is when my stepdad died. He was in a nursing home and pretty sick. My mom was stressed out and her cousin invited her to a party. I told my wife and daughter it was going to be good for her to let loose since her husband was going to die like tomorrow. Awful joke, I know, but I made it anyway. I go pick her up from the party around midnight, and she's drunk and happy. Drop her off, go home to bed. I wake up around 3, sat up and said, "Goodbye, Joe," and immediately went back to sleep. A few hours later, I'm enjoying my coffee when I get the call he died overnight.